Yo, so today we had Tim Uhler. His Instagram handle is Awesome Framers. He works with Kyle. While most people know them as the dancing and singing duo, we kind of went down a different road than we all anticipated on this one. He speaks to what's important to him in his life and business, and scaling back to live a pretty honest lifestyle, and not kind of outgrow the family business that they developed over the years. Did it stop raining out there yet, Tim?
No.
Dude, I don't know how you do it.
That's
I just
crazy.
sit there and watch you in the rain, and I get anxiety watching you. I'm like, oh my wet.
Yeah. I know everybody lately, the last week, has been complaining about, well, your guys' tools are going to break. We've never had any damage to tools from the rain.
Yeah. I just even if my belt got wet, I feel like I wouldn't be able to put it on unless I had rain clothes on again. I would
You're
be
like a cat.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is why they say framers are a dying breed, because we're stuck.
I just if I'm out in the rain, even hoses and stuff, I would have to keep the gloves on all day long, because I feel like once I start getting my hands, and it's just like you're trying to wipe your hands off.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's when that wet sawdust gets under your nails and stuff.
Yeah.
That we always joke that if we have earplugs in and the music loud enough, you can't hear the rain.
Yeah.
If you have a hat on and gloves on, you don't really feel the rain. You can fool yourself until lunchtime, and then don't take off your rain clothes because they get cold. So just leave them on.
Yeah. I don't know. I have trouble even, I'll go, obviously it's cold here, but go from inside to outside. And if my truck's warmed up and I have on clothes like a jacket, I freak. I need to get my jacket off because it's so uncomfortable. And I just watch you completely bundled up every day. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
I can't even function right now.
People will say that because nobody uses umbrellas here. If you're walking on the street in Seattle, nobody's got an umbrella. It's like, we just know, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like every time I see you, it's raining now.
For what?
Yeah.
When it rains?
Yeah,
For my wife.
It's supposed to be cloudy tomorrow instead of raining.
I have one for my fiance.
Yeah, I don't think we even own an umbrella. I don't even have a jacket with a hood.
That's weird.
I know, it is weird.
It might mess up your hair. I take pride in walking from Panera to my truck and not looking like I'm being affected by the rain.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to be in the rain, I just wear a hat. And
I just
deal
own
with
it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, but you're not outside framing houses.
No, I'm not taking anything.
No,
away
I know.
from I'm talking about the common
running
folk.
into the house.
It'd be pretty sweet, though, if you did try and work with an umbrella. Or maybe one of those umbrella hats.
Yeah, I've seen guys that they think the umbrella on top of the hard hat is going to help.
Yeah.
I've seen that kind of as a gag gift or something.
Tim, you tag 11 a lot in workwear. Are you guys, what's the affiliation there?
So I just wish I was Australian. That's all. They get to wear the short shorts legally. No, I bought gear from them to start out with. I reached out to them early on, and they just ignored me. And then I bought some stuff. And then as the account grew, then they've sent me, I think, a couple jackets and a couple polos.
So you're doing it more out of good faith? They're not paying you for it?
Yeah. I get kind of a bad rap. I'll get DMs from people. They think that everything I tag is I'm being sponsored. Mm-hmm. Most of that stuff I bought.
Yeah.
I just like it. So
I was just curious. I noticed you did a lot. And I didn't know if it was something that you set up with them officially, or if it was just like a cool brand you were getting behind.
It somehow I found them, and it was kind of a joke. I don't know if your guys' dads were this way, but I know my wife's was and my dad. All of our pictures from the 70s, their shorts are so short the pockets stick out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a joke, like, oh, wouldn't that be great on the job site? That'd be really funny. And then I found those Australian shorts, and it was like, it was a great joke, and it is funny, but it also is more comfortable going up and down ladders.
Yeah.
Very true.
I can
That's
get
how
down
I
with
started.
that. I'm a short kind of guy. Not short shorts.
Not pockets
shorter,
out, though.
short.
Pockets out.
Pockets
But
out's a little short.
Pockets out's a different
I
crowd.
just wear them, hit the grocery store on the way home. And Kyle's like, you really wearing those things in the grocery store? It just didn't cross my mind. And I'd get all these sideways glances like,
there's more
really?
people watching you on Instagram than there are in that grocery store.
True.
So,
right, yeah. But it's a little easier when you can't see their expression.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Go
amazing.
into Lowe's with your short shorts.
I should definitely get a pair of them and try them on one day and just walk around with the tool belt on. You want to see people stare?
Tyler. Well, you're also inked up there, aren't you?
I mean, my whole legs are pretty much covered. It'd be a good look.
Yeah, it definitely would be a good
That
look.
and the mustache.
Like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
All right.
No,
So I think we got.
I was cracking up whenever. Yeah, I guess you can tell that people are asking you to think you're sponsored, and you tagged like everyone in your post, like 100 people. So funny. People on Instagram are so annoying.
Yeah, I get those guys that tell me I have this responsibility not to recommend things like the Martinez square, and I just reply to them, I haven't recommended it. I've just showed what it can do.
Yeah,
Prototype. Here's what it is. Buy it or don't buy it. That doesn't matter to me.
And that's the thing. It's like there's the guys out there that are getting these free tools and then doing these bogus tool reviews, and then the guys that are just, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it does, and this is what I use it for. Not you'll never believe how square this square is, and how great it is, and how my impact driver drives a screw in 0.2 seconds faster than my Makita. It's like no one cares about that stuff, man. No one
cares. I know.
It's like
there's certain accounts that we can't figure out why anybody's following him, because Kyle's thing is he will instantly unfollow somebody if every video they've shot is with the Instagram camera. And it's, one-handed, so everything is shaky and it's a close-up in somebody's backyard.
Yeah.
Like the chainsaw, where somebody goes and finds something that's wood to cut and they're in flip-flops.
Right. Yeah. It's like best chainsaw I've ever used.
Yeah. Like, I doubt it.
Yeah. It is. It's the only one you've ever used, too.
Yeah.
Cool. We got everything good on our end? All right. We'll roll into this. Do we have key points where we want to hit?
I mean, I can't find Tim beyond trade magazines. He's not on LinkedIn. I couldn't find him.
No, I got your notification and I realized I have a LinkedIn profile.
You got it, but it is not a lot of info in there.
Yeah. I bet I started that back when the market crashed and then just forgot about it.
Doesn't even say how long you've owned the company.
He was slow. It was slow for like a couple months. I started LinkedIn, and then I got a big job.
Tim,
I don't need LinkedIn.
Is it Euler?
Yep.
Euler, okay.
And do you have anything you want to talk about specifically?
Me or
Can
Tim?
You put both them on the
No. I'm kind of a little surprised. This whole thing for us kind of started as just a joke. So.
So I feel like, I think that there should be, I feel like your Instagram presence, not that we really know you outside of that, is laughable and comical. I think that that's good. I also did like one serious thing I wanted to talk to you about. I know framing to tolerance. And that was like when Fine Home Building posted that crap, that was like a huge deal. And I think obviously that's something that's real. And that people don't understand. And I think, if you're still doing your job the way it should be done, there are people down the line that should be compensating for that. And I just think it's something good to touch on, because I don't think a lot of people realize that. And a lot of times it's just like, oh, framers screw this up, or, we're like, you're not getting paid to do, above and beyond that. And it is on somebody else to fix that. And I just think that's a good topic to touch on.
Yeah,
where do you want to start?
I wanted to get into a couple items where it's kind of how you got exposed to this business, like I always do. Just to kind of get some track record down, and maybe and the reason why we do that is to see if maybe that 6-year-old kid can click with you, or that 12-year-old kid, or the mom of the 17-year-old kid can see them in you, or vice versa. And that kind of gives you some track line there. And then also, everyone's kind of right now a one-trick pony. But you guys aren't. Like, you guys will do the concrete, you guys will do the foundation work, you do the flat work, and you still frame. I want to touch upon that. Like, what made you kind of, whether it comes in your timeline, or that, hey, you were framing and you kept running into, awful foundation guys. You guys just took it on like most people adopt certain things, or was it from the get-go? And then probably to Tyler's point is framing tolerance, is that no one sees your stuff at the finished product. So, like most of your work, where it's coming from, that stuff, and where's the value that you're pitching to whoever your next client is, that stuff. And then I'm sure those 3 topics or 4 topics will run on 15 different gamuts, tools. I had tools, while you started writing for certain trade magazines, taking that time out, that is time and effort from, the norm.
Let's just use
But
it.
mostly dancing and music.
What's funny about the dancing thing is that literally there is 4 times in my life I have ever danced in public. My wedding, my brother's wedding, my sister's wedding, and Kyle's wedding. I'm not kidding.
That's amazing.
My wife is always like, what's going on this? Well, but we've always done it on the job site. It's just that now we have a platform that.
I feel like half the stuff I do on a job site, I'm like, I hope that the customers don't have cameras. Like singing in the middle of the day. Like if they heard this right now.
Like the little nanny cam. They just
exactly.
Yeah.
Steve and I are making up songs.
We've had clients comment on that though, that the singing kind of, I don't know, we like what we do, not always the circumstances that we're in, but it helps. Good music, singing, just, kind of keeps the mood. I'm sure that there's a study about endorphins that are released and all that good stuff, but we've had clients comment on that.
There was like a TV show where they put like hid cameras in cars and would record people when they're singing. And I remember watching that and be like, I don't sing in the car ever. And then after I watched that show, I'd catch myself all the time. I'm like, wait a second, I just sing. So now I'm like looking around like, is there someone watching me? Like just I think that you're using the camera as that buffer, right? Like you talk about, you don't dance in public, but you're using the camera as a buffer. And I think you do a really good job at it for someone that doesn't dance in public. You're very dancing in public every day.
Yeah, it's true. Well, when I was younger, a teenager, one of the young guys that worked with us, we always used to think, man, we should have our own reality show. Somebody out there must find this funny. And it was just a joke, like nobody's going to find that funny. So now that this thing's kind of exploded, it's just like, somebody does find it funny. Okay. Good. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, like 50,000 people find it funny.
Yeah, go figure.
Is that how many followers you have now? You're rolling.
Yeah, it was 100% a joke when it started. Kyle came up with the name, and it was just for some local friends.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at those very first posts, there's like 13 likes. It was literally just our close friends locally.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, my editor over at Tools, Chris, said, I think you should take this more seriously. Okay. And here we are.
Not taking it more seriously.
Not taking it more seriously. Yeah.
Assigning singing battles across the platform.
Yeah, which almost nobody will respond to. I think Tyler's one of the only ones.
Yeah.
I think it's contagious.
I enjoy it. It's probably one of my favorite. Steve was very excited. Steve was always like, you got to get Awesome Framers on. He wants Awesome Framers and Sedge. It's like his top 2.
Oh, yeah. Sedge is all over it too. That's so funny.
Yeah. But he was pretty pumped to hear about it. Other than minor setback today, he was pretty excited.
Yeah, that's rough, man. That's a horrible way to start the day.
I can just imagine what he like. How long do you know how long it took for him to text you? Like I feel like he just sat there. Like,
I would much rather be in my position than his position.
Absolutely.
Should we fill people in? Because this is weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That the 4 of us know.
So
we just have a conversation about something that no one else can know about.
We got both vans up and running yesterday, ready to get back to work after work. And then this morning, Steve was on his way in early, and there was an accident in front of him that he couldn't stop for, and bashed up the van pretty good. So we're back down to 1 van.
So that's it. Before its first oil change?
From a, laws of the road standpoint, I guess if you hit anyone from behind, even if they cut you off or stop in the middle of the highway, you're at fault. Yep. So we have to go through that whole insurance mess and all that stuff. He's fine, didn't get hurt, walked away from it, but the truck's now sitting at the shop getting ready to get fixed up. It's not totaled at this point, but
rough
getting it fixed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're saying that Steve had a rough day, I had a rough day. And I would rather be in my position than in Steve's position. But yeah, I think that the accident happened and he called me right away, like minutes afterwards, which I would have been like sitting there like, all right, let me think, what do I got to do? How am I going to explain this? And I think he just called me and just told me what was going on. And all right, let's figure out what we got to do. Yeah. So by 11, it was at 6:15 or 6:16. By 11, we had it at the body shop, and we're picking up cabinets in Pennsylvania. So
crazy. Yeah, that's a rough start to the day. I think I was getting in my truck, and I got that picture, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
I had the exact same reaction.
I was like, I don't even know what to write back right now. I don't think
you thought it was my other truck.
No, I didn't. I knew it was
the insurance claim.
I knew, yeah. I knew it was your van, and I was like, and he doesn't have a box truck, and because I didn't know you got the other truck back, so I was like, he's either buying a trailer or just going home.
Selling all this stuff.
Yeah, I was like considering just going home, and that thought was in my head. For like 20 minutes, I was figuring out how I could switch my schedule around so that I could just crawl into my bed. Like this morning, like what can I do tomorrow and then Friday and switch it around. And then finally it was like, all right, I just got to take care of this.
Well, we're talking about morale, and Tim, we were talking earlier about like, so obviously the dancing, but how outside looking in, you guys look happy every single day on the job, but you said that that's not the case.
Oh, we have our moments. I think overall though, we keep it pretty upbeat.
Is it just you two guys?
Yeah. So background, as far as Johnny's question earlier, so the way I got into building was my dad. He grew up on a farm in North Dakota. And when he and mom met in 1970, they got married, and then he had just graduated college, put himself through college, and went to Vietnam for 10 months. And since his degree was in finance, he ended up in the finance corps and did his 10 months there, managing rents in Saigon. And when he came back, they had all moved out to Washington from North Dakota, and he couldn't find a job at the bank, but the local production builder was hiring. And that's kind of the rest of it. He started doing books for Charlie, and then eventually superintending. And he could kind of see the writing on the wall that Charlie was spending more than they were making. So he went out on his own in 1978.
Building at that point.
Yeah. And so what he did initially is they had saved up money, if I recall, and he hired a lead carpenter. So during the day he would frame, and then at night he would run the business and do the books. And that way he always paid himself wages.
But Tim, when he was doing the books for the other framer, was he doing that and swinging a hammer?
No, he was for Charlie. Charlie was the production builder. So, man, I think they were building like 100 homes a year.
Wow.
Maybe at the end. Yeah, you see a lot of them around. So he was just superintending that. And then I think they had a bookkeeper in the office. My brother says in the bio, I think dad was a comptroller. I'm still not exactly sure what that is. An accountant with decision-making ability? I don't know.
So he took a job with him initially doing the books, then transitioned to superintendent. And then as the company was kind of starting to fall apart, some started his own thing.
I think that would have been 1973. So for 5 years, I think he worked there for Ryan Built. And I don't think it was falling apart per se. I think he just saw that this is something he would like to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And take that direction.
He could be more successful at it than spending more than he makes.
Yeah. I mean, there's stories about old Charlie that every once in a while we still run into people that knew him, and the keg of beer in the back trunk. And I mean, it was wild man.
So he was swinging.
How long is that going to go before that train derails?
Those wheels fall off.
Yeah. So he went into, so he just started swinging a hammer just out of nowhere, just to start the business and run the business and run the books at night.
I'm not sure what the thinking was at the beginning. He's always had in-house framers, and so we're still hearing stories about old Gary. Him and Gary would frame like just wild men, and then he'd do the books at night. I believe the first few houses were all spec. And it was right when the economy in the late 70s, 1980, it was the stagflation, and then inflation rates went crazy high. I think they were 20%. Wow. And so, yeah, that's how he cut his teeth. And he made it work.
If you could make it work,
and
then.
he was building full houses at that point, not just framing.
Yeah, he was the builder. Yeah, I think the only thing that they did in-house probably early on was the framing. I don't think they did anything else.
So he just oversee the rest of it throughout.
Yeah.
And did you work
so
for him?
then, yeah.
Say that again.
Sorry, did you
I
work
missed
for
the
him?
question. Yeah. So we're a family business. Yeah, everybody thinks we're framing subs or siding so Pioneer Builders is family business in '78.
Oh, this is the same company that's around today.
Yeah. My brother runs the Pioneer Builders Instagram. So, I mean, we have pictures of me. I think my 6th grade summer, which is totally not legal now, but
Sure.
it was 1989. We just spent the summer on the job site.
Yeah.
Framing, and just loved it. And after high school, I did a couple of years at the community college, but I always knew that I'd rather be on the job site. My brother's the one that did has really taken the accounting seriously. So he's mostly running the business now. And then, it's he's 71. So he's semi-retired.
Your brother's
So
71?
you
Hold on.
no,
Wait a
Dad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Dad.
So
Okay.
you so right
I was like,
now
wait.
you have
He looks 71. And Brian, you're going to like that comment when you listen.
Well, he told
So
us to
right
be nice
now
to you,
you-
so.
Yeah.
you're framing only for Pioneer Builders.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting this. I didn't realize that was the only. It's starting to make sense now. You got to piece this together better. Nobody knows this.
I don't
It's
know
all
that either.
secret.
This is what the episode's
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah, and the thing is with Instagram, every once in a while I'll mention it, but it gets buried in a comment
I mean, I knew he was your brother, and I knew, but I didn't realize that you guys were seeing these through to completion.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Dad started, so his background is accounting. He wasn't the builder first. It was the business side.
Mhm.
And so he's been able to be pretty creative to stay in business all these years.
Are these customs?
Through the downturn, pretty much everything was custom, but his preference would be to build spec.
So right now
It's easier.
you're building spec.
Yeah. But now that we look at the market, it looks like it's slowing down a little bit. Brian's taking the phone calls again on customs. So I imagine spring, summer, kind of go that route.
Yeah, so I'm that's interesting because your dad, you said, went to college and then went to Vietnam. And then, so your brother's older than you?
Younger, 2 years.
He's younger. All right, so you're the oldest in the business, just you two?
Yeah.
So when it came, you got into high school and then you said community college. At that point, your dad didn't, or your parents didn't really push college per se. They were fine with you just going right into this.
Yeah. Mom's big thing always was, well, you should have something to fall back on in case you get hurt. And
Sure.
Brian did running start, which here meant that your junior and senior years in high school, you could do at the community college. And so we were at the community college together taking the classes. And it was pretty obvious in most of the math classes. He's the student. I mean, you look at Pioneer Builders.
Yeah.
Brian loves to get way out into the weeds on stuff. And he's good at teaching it. So he's able to assimilate it and teach it. I just would rather be outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I got good enough grades. I think I had a 3.2 for my AA, but it was like, I'm just doing my time. I'd rather be on the job site.
Yeah, I feel like I can relate to that. And it's the same thing with my parents and everyone else. It's like that common saying that you need something to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I don't know, I think a lot of people probably end up going to college because somebody tells them they need something to fall back on. Where it's like, I don't know, maybe figure that out if you need to fall back on something.
I mean, I think it's a default. I think everyone freaks out that they won't get a job. That's how it was for me. You need a degree to get a job. Then we all got it, and there was no jobs.
Yeah, for me, it was mostly mom just thought, well, all framers get hurt. So you better have something you can do that doesn't involve using your body.
So you started framing in the summers and then in college, and it was always you just wanted to do framing. You didn't want to do anything more than that or get into finishes. You just liked the framing aspect of it.
Yeah, we always say we'd love to get into finish carpentry, but we've specialized in framing for so long, and we're so much better at it than finish that it's always cheaper to have somebody, basically sub the framing. But we've had it all in-house before.
But Tim, I want to go back a little bit. So your dad didn't actually swing a hammer, right? Or did he? He was your mentor?
He did, yeah. But he was more like, he self-describes as a laborer. He'd bang walls together while the lead carpenter laid everything out. So he was just either what would he? I think it's usually 2-man crew, sometimes 3-man, and then he could focus on business after hours.
So how'd you fall into that part of kind of beyond a laborer?
Say that again.
How'd you fall? Well, it was way more poetic the first time. But what made you go beyond that than just that kind of laborer? If that's what your dad was doing, I think usually everyone falls behind their dad as a mentor for so much time. What pushed you beyond that? He
knew he wasn't going to be a lead framer because he wanted to, be the business owner and be the builder. For me, I just started like after school framing with the guys, and I just loved it. And just over time, getting better at it. And as guys moved on, basically left me.
And
Go
ahead, Tyler.
Go ahead, Nick. Go.
So Kyle, how did he get involved in this? Like, where did he come from?
So Kyle's brother-in-law worked for us, Matt, and Kyle needed a job. I think he was doing hardwood or something. And Matt said, hey, my brother-in-law, Kyle was 19. This is 2005. I mean, and you should see the pictures. He's just a fun kid.
Oh, he's young.
We laugh about that. Yeah. He's a millennial, which I like to tease him about. Born in 85.
Awesome.
So he started here. At that time, what did we have? Probably a 4-man crew. And then as guys moved on, and then when we got slow in 08, we've had to let him go a couple times way back when. And then he'd come back. So he's just stuck around, and we've kind of built this system now around the two of us where it's hard to plug somebody else in. We've tried it, and it's just like, well, we don't know where to plug them in at. We've worked together so long.
Yeah, and I know Johnny's going to probably dig into the 2008 thing, but like for Kyle and like that 2-man crew, I think that's unique to you guys.
It's unique to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Usually crews, the higher up guys don't want to do as much work as what you're putting in, Tim, with your expertise. So it's usually falling down where I don't know if it's called lazy, but they'll probably put in 2 or 3 laborers just to do less grunt work. That's common.
Yeah.
Almost everything I see.
And I know it's like it's through the eyes of Instagram or social media, but you guys seem so well orchestrated that you're not like your system and how stuff goes together, and it's so methodical. But I feel like I still watch it and see you guys progress and get better at things. And that I think is the most interesting thing, because you guys are a 2-man crew. You guys are, I could be wrong, but equally working just as hard and for a common result. But you're also you guys are like going back crisscrossing and teaching and learning at the same time, which is, I just think it's very unique.
Yeah, that was so for me. So I think I get this from Dad, because he grew up on a farm and then did the business side. He's always wanted to learn, because he didn't work in the trades, from the time he was little. So he's always done the builder shows, subscribed to all the builder magazines. So I've grown up reading Fine Home Building and JLC. And that was just my thing, is to read them and then try new things. And then with the internet and guys on the forums, the old break time forum at Fine Home Building, probably back in 2001, 2002, was outstanding. Like the best guys in the country somehow landed there and were willing to teach. And same thing at JLC. Some of those guys, if you go back and search those forum posts, you can see where I didn't know anything. Anybody can frame a wall.
Right.
Those guys just opened it up for roof framing, all that kind of stuff.
So you were involved in the message boards and the forums before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I started writing for JLC. Was somebody had asked a question about, this is way back, 2003. Somebody asked a question about using fiber cement siding, and we had switched to that because of the big LP failure in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And so I just posted what we did, and one of the editors happened to be on the forum and called me up and said, would you be interested in writing? I think we could turn that into an article. And I was like, sure. And he lived in the Bay Area, so he flew up and spent a couple of days with us, and that was it. Wow. If Dave Frayne would have never reached out, then there would be none of this stuff. It was just good timing.
So do you want to dig into
dude, go to town, man.
So I am curious about.
I don't know why you need my approval.
No, I'm not looking for your approval. I know like the downturn and the recession is like your hot spot.
Yeah, I'm going to new things now.
New things. Yeah. I am curious, like what happened in 2008? Like, why, obviously you say you let Kyle go, and, where did he go into another direction? Did he kind of stick, like, were you still working? Did you guys, what happened then?
Yeah, so we had, let's say 2005, 2006 was probably our peak. And so we had, I think, 4 guys on my crew, and my cousin would work summers. We had 2 finish carpenters and a siding crew. We were subbing out the foundations just because we couldn't possibly keep up. And then it was really a nice natural attrition. Some guys needed to move to take care of family. And so the employee base shrunk to just 3 of us. I think we still had our finish carpenter then. And it just got slow. And so Matt took another job. Kyle worked through one spec that we built that we started in like October 2008. Bear Stearns had happened like the month before. And we thought, well, we're already into it. Let's just keep going. At the end of that job, we were basically out of work. So we had to lay Kyle off. I think he went to work for another builder for probably 6 or 8 months, until we had a couple other projects come up. So I think he came back late 08, and then no hiccups until now. So Brian and I kept busy. I mean, that spec house, we did everything. We did the drywall. We didn't know how to do flat work. So the garage, our sub said, hey, you can just be the laborers for us. So we spent the day doing that. I think it was snowing outside. We did the drywall. I mean, my mom just loves to tease us about what a poor drywall job that was, but the taper said it was fine. So
I wish IT was around then, right? Imagine
yeah.
Get a story of that.
So we did that. I think I did the finish work in that house with Robin. So we kind of tried to do as much as we could just to stretch out what we had.
So it's interesting. So he went to work for another builder, but the moment you guys were kind of back on track, he came right back. And I think that probably speaks a lot to the culture you guys have now. And it was probably very similar back then.
Nobody puts baby in the corner.
Yeah, it's always been very, growing up, all the guys that worked for Pioneer Builders, it really was like a family. It's just, and even the subs. I think at my wedding, I think our HVAC sub and our electrician were there. I think our plumber might have been. So the relationships there were basically family. That's for cool. Years. And so for Kyle, I gave his wedding talk when he married Katie back in 2014. So we got vacation together, and we have our moments. About every 2 years, we have a nice blow up and a 2-hour discussion, and then we're back to normal. So it's almost like it's just like another family. Yeah.
So what kind of keeps you? I feel like you've been framing for a long time now. Obviously, you are doing customs and stuff, but what keeps you going and like not burning out from doing that every day? Is it increasing your efficiency? Is it like what kind of still sparks that fire for you? Because I feel like a lot of people either want to progress to something else or want to get into something else, or just get tired of doing what, like, it's not like you're doing you're doing one of the most difficult trades as far as heavy lifting and being outside, and it's not clean, and it's hot, it's cold, it's raining. But I mean, guys starting out don't want to frame. Why do you still want to frame at this point?
For me, that's a good question. So Dad was always the guy forward thinking. He was the one that suggested years ago, early 2000s, he goes, I really think we need to get a forklift. And the older framer that had taught me, he was like, no, we don't need it. So we bought this old, like 1978 Badger Dynamics. It had no brakes, barely worked, but it was cheap, and we tried it out. And we couldn't believe, like, the first house, how much more energy we had at the end of the day. Because like you're saying, you're not packing all your I-joists up to the second floor. You just lift them up to the second floor. And we just thought, oh man. So getting that, and then just working it into the process and learning how to use the forklift. If it was as physically demanding as it looks, I would be 20 or 30 pounds lighter. So we just learned how to use the machine to lift all the heavy stuff. And then around that, we could build these systems where it was like, we used to not build the rake wells. Then we started doing it. I think I read a Mike Gerton article or something way back when in Fine Home Building. It was like, let's try it. Then over time, we've progressed. Well, let's add the overhangs to it. Well, we've added overhangs. Why aren't we putting the soffit on? I don't know. Let's try that. Okay, now we have the soffit on. How much siding can we put on it before we lift it? So it's just, that's what keeps it fun, is what's the next piece of improvement or step in the improvement process that will make our life easier later. And it's paying off now because we're getting all this activity. I think it's because of Instagram, where the state safety inspectors keep driving by. So you notice in our recent posts, we're putting up guardrails and we're doing all this stuff because we have to. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's turning out to be a lot easier for us. So that's what keeps it interesting for me. And then on top of it, in the old days, it was the forums where somebody from Texas could post, here's how they build stairs. Okay, then we'll try it. But now it's Instagram. Is the instant feedback. And like I posted on wall bracing. And a bunch of guys had these great suggestions that I'm just like, I wouldn't, obviously in 20 years, I haven't figured that out. So they get that nice community back and forth where you just go, we can keep learning, keep improving. And that's what keeps it fresh.
Yeah, I think that's
so
interesting.
Far.
Like
far.
That's what I like most about the platform, is that you have that instant feedback, but you're also watching how other people are doing it. And I'm not sure if it's the same post you're just referring to, but when you were springing the wall, I can't tell you how many guys don't know what that does or what it's for.
Use them.
Yeah.
And they don't use it. And it's like, how, I remember when I first learned, this builder was like, yeah, we, spring and string. I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And he told me once, I'm like, all right, I'll do that every time. Like it just makes sense. Like now I understand why, our rafters didn't fit that one time, because we didn't string, the wall wasn't straight. But it's sharing that and the feedback that you got for other ways. That's what makes at least my job, and obviously that's what you're getting at with your job, is that's what makes it interesting, because you're not going to work and you're really not doing necessarily, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing the same thing differently every day.
Yeah. And that's it. So like when in the 80s, all the framers back then, a lot of them had come from California. That was like the breeding ground for all these techniques. At the same time, they did the siding, formed and poured the foundations. And then I think it was probably the late 80s. We always used to use trusses, the company did. But the market was booming and trusses were crazy delayed. And the carpenters were like, we know how to hand cut. And so once they started doing that, Dad's was like, we're not going back to trusses. Now we can control our own scheduling. We can put more, we can kind of customize the ceilings better. Well, now we're right back to the same position where it might take you 6 weeks to get a truss design and then another 6 weeks to get delivery.
Right.
And so even our engineer said, a lot of guys locally are just like, we'll figure it out. Just design us a hand cut and we'll go at it, because we can't wait 6 weeks.
Right.
So now with Instagram, it's been nice because foundations, we always used to do our own foundations. So that was easy to do when the market dropped out. We just started self-performing more. Instead of subbing them out, we just brought that back in-house. But that was easy. It's easy to teach. Our stuff here, our frost line is basically 0. It's technically 12 inches, I think, but a lot of our lots are pretty flat. So we're talking 2-foot crawl space, nothing crazy. But then we thought, the guys used to do the flat work too back in the day. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but we could do exposed, and it was a lot of fun. Watching these guys on Instagram, just like, they just poured that and broomed that front porch in the afternoon. We can figure out how to do that. Get online, a few of these guys, Clark Construction on Instagram, man, that guy's great. You DM him with questions, he'll get right back to you. NE Concrete Forming out of Canada. Mm-hmm. He'll send me like 20 videos consecutive on here's how throw a pebble on the concrete. When it bounces, that's when you put the power trowel on. All of this stuff that you could only learn by doing it the wrong way, you can now learn from the professionals within a matter of hours. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that, especially from an older generation, like what the value of the platform is. And as much BS as there is on there, and like the people giving you a hard time and people wanting to nitpick everything, there is a lot of good on there, and there is a lot of knowledge that people are just willing to share. Like, it's no benefit to them. It's just like, hey, if I can help this person out. And I think that's always been cool. And it goes back to like the Mike Gertons and the Gary Katz and the Mike Slogotts, where it's like these people just wanting to put out content and it's not for financial backing. It's not for sponsorships. It's almost just like they want to get that. Like, there's just a need to want to get that stuff out there. Like, why do you want to write for JLC? It's not because they're paying you an arm and a leg. You're not getting rich. Like, there's just something almost innately within you that you want to either help or you want to teach, or you're proud of what you learned or taught yourself or screwed up and want to show somebody else that.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of that on Instagram, which is pretty incredible.
Well, if those guys at the old forums wouldn't have shared, you hear the stories. I was talking to Mark Martinez the other day, and these guys that could cut roofs in the tracks in the 70s would guard. They'd have their notebook of formulas, and I mean, they guarded that. Well, those guys were making so much money because they were the only ones that knew how to do it.
Right.
And if you were fortunate, maybe you got to work with that guy and he taught you. Otherwise, you had to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if all of those guys then were willing to share it on the forums, and it became a nice collective where people could bounce ideas, and because we all build a little differently, we had this way of refining things. If people were willing to share that with me, then how lame would that be not to share it with other people?
Sure.
I mean, that's just like, to me, the worst.
Yeah.
Don't all get better by sharing.
Right. And I mean, I preach that all the time. Like, it's better to just share and collaborate. What Tommy Silva's collaborate over or something.
Yeah.
And it's, why not you be the professional? Like the guy holding his notebook, if he's not going to share, someone else will. And wouldn't you rather be the guy that shares and be the professional and be looked upon as someone greater than anyone else? Like if your ego is that important, I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think from my personal experience is that I've been through those hardships where social media didn't exist, and how hard it was to learn those simple things that once you got it down, you're like, God, I can't believe it took me like 3 different jobs to do that task to get it right. And we've all been through that hardship. So I think just being able to give that back and not have someone else go through that, whether it was like if you had someone on your crew and you wanted to teach them that so that way they wouldn't make that mistake. It's so obvious to fix. So I think that's where it comes down to is that, I mean, Tim, you said it earlier that you had a mentor early on that made it fun. Okay.
Yeah.
I think doing that and then being able to give back, because we have fun generally. Like, there is stress. There's stuff like Tyler's Day, how it started today, but that'll get offset and wiped out by how much fun and what we get to create and the creativity and all that. And being able to give back to this industry beyond just the job and the area is amazing with the social media and even this podcast, because we love what we do. You go down to the city and ask everyone gets off the tee if they love what they do. Most of them are going to say no. And we're probably in better shape when we have a tan year round, whether it's windburn or whatever. it's free, but I think we're probably one of the, I want to say, I don't know any stats, but probably one of the only industries that will give this away for free. People will do classes and try and make money off it. It's for free because we love it. We want to give back more than we've taken. And it takes a little bit of, experience and years to want to do that, I don't know. It's my take.
Yeah, I follow Ellie the Apprentice. She's a young Australian up in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And watching her go through her classes, it makes me, I'm a little jealous in Canada and Australia, because here we're just taught on the job site in residential. You may not be taught correctly. Maybe you are. Maybe you had that good guy. But seeing her course outline, it's like, oh man, I would love to go to school up there. They're doing it all. They're learning surveying. They learn all the math around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Jeff.
We
has
don't
one
get
too.
to do that.
Is it Molly that's working with Harvey?
Yeah,
Jeff Harvey.
Yeah,
same thing. Like she's got a whole course outline. She's on the job and then she goes back to school. Like we didn't have that.
Yeah,
I mean, but we should. We absolutely should because electricians have to do X amount of hours. So do plumbers, and these guys are working in buildings that guys can pick it up tomorrow if they want to, or like Tyler can spend $120 or whatever it is to get a sheet of paper that makes him a builder.
There's no way you could send a young girl to Tim or Kyle's job site. No chance.
Why?
With those shorts and those moves.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's funny because the neighbor lady on the job that we're on, she just talks his ear off. And we've learned with certain people, and I'm sure you guys have this experience. you can tell that person that wants to talk. Oh, so you just don't look them in the eye.
Yeah.
And then you end up just accidentally looking them in the eye, and that's all it takes. And there goes a half hour.
She's like, I thought you never look.
I got a few site guys and
look.
subcontractors that are like that. And you're like, I'm not going to get out of the truck. He's digging the hole. He's fine. If he has a question, he'll text me. But if I get out of the truck, I'm going to lose in 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
So what, how old are you, Tim?
41.
41. What's the goal? You know, I mean, I get it all the time. I just turned 33 and everyone's like, you can't work like this forever. You're going to beat your body up. You know, you got to start giving up control. Just bigger forklifts or what?
Hey, that was a private conversation.
Yeah. Brian and I were just talking about that before the podcast started. You know, he has 3 kids. Kyle has 1. I have a dog. And so I was the smart one. He was potty trained in 4 days.
Smart.
When my oldest nephew was potty training, I always kept telling Brian about that. I'm just like, Scout, man, she was potty trained in 4 days. She had to figure it out. It was taking him so long. The plan basically is just to kind of follow Dad's footsteps. Keep the company going. Eventually I'll get too old for this, but as long as we have the machines and things, we'll have to hire somebody and kind of integrate them into the system, find the right personality. But none of us have plans to move on. And Pioneer Builders has been really a good, we've lived a good, solid middle-class lifestyle since the early 80s. Been able to vacation as a family and not just be crazy stressed out. Our commutes are never very long, and because Dad has the business side, the company's in good shape financially. Brian is a smart guy. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. He's crazy smart the way that he can. I've never seen somebody organized. I wish we should have done this podcast over at the office, because he's got this stand-up desk now because it's supposed to be better for you. And so he'll be doing his QuickBooks thing and multitasking. He'll have podcasts going on in the background, and he's assimilating it all. So we all have the same mindset. Let's just keep improving. Now the energy code keeps getting stricter. And so instead of complaining about it, let's get into it. We bought the blower door, we're doing the air sealing thing, trying to find the rational, let's not be passive house and not get paid for the work we're doing type of thing. I mean, those guys can, and that's great, but that wouldn't fly here. So the goal is just to keep it rolling until the way Dad did it, till he couldn't work. He'd still be out there swinging a hammer or cleaning up on the job site if he had the help to do it.
So then how'd that transition happen where Dad moved on? Did he get a piece of Pioneer?
So he is Pioneer, really.
Yeah.
It's just that Brian's taken over the day-to-day stuff. So Dad's still, 40 years of experience. He's, been there, done that, made all the mistakes, figured out what works, what doesn't work. So he's able to kind of sit back and enjoy the fun parts, like him and Mom will pick out colors and do some of the decorating and the stuff that he doesn't need to be stressed about. But he still likes, we joke because he drives a little RAV. That's the other thing about Dad, is he's never been the big, you see a lot of these contractors that as soon as they get their first paycheck, they go buy the giant truck. And then they don't use it for work because it's too nice of a truck. That's just never been him. So he'll invest in the equipment, but he's driving a little RAV4. And we'll see him just driving up and down the street. And we're like, oh, there he goes. Oh, there he comes. Oh, he's coming with coffee. He just loves the trade. And so he just wants to be involved. Yeah.
I feel like that's such a good spot, especially at that age, just where it's like to be involved, but just to have no stress. To have like a guy like Brian in the back end, it's just like he's running the show, and I'm going to just drive my RAV4 around, pick up coffee, probably too many times in the day, but it's fun for him.
It's got to be so rewarding.
And that's because it's always been kind of a family thing. We go on vacation and we would time it around the Street of Dreams or Parade of Homes and get ideas, and that's always been his mentality. So it's just passed on to all of us. We're all, as a family, we're all going to Vegas for the Builder Show.
That's awesome.
So that's just always been the thing. Yeah. And it's just fun, but we're very fortunate. I really, considering that we all live close to each other and we all spend so much time together, there's not that much family drama. We have our moments, but it's been really a good experience. And I know Brian, he doesn't want his kids to necessarily go into framing or something, because it isn't the easiest thing in the world. On the other hand, it is nice to keep it in the family.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you talk to a lot of people in family. My father owns a business, and I worked for him for 11 years. And I mean, family business is very difficult. The dynamic is difficult if it doesn't work. And then you talk to, I mean, you're a perfect example. It works for you guys. You have your moments, but everyone has their moments. You know,
Yeah.
I would say, again, I don't have stats, but I'd say most family businesses are way more high strung and high stress than, you know, a traditional like business with no family or friend, you know, relationship.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times with family businesses, there's just a lot of people trying to get not a lot of money. And like it ends up creating a very crazy dynamic, or people, you know, comparing what this person's doing and what they're getting paid. And I mean, it's all out in the open and everyone knows everything. And I think that that ends up kind of creating a lot of strife. And I mean, I have a lot of respect for being able to do that. I also started in a family business and it almost trashed my relationship with my dad. But I think one thing that's really important to note and that kind of resonated with me is that you said you have like a really good, solid blue collar, middle class lifestyle that you guys have. And I think that so many kids are growing up nowadays and everyone wants to be rich and drive a nice car or a big truck and kind of like make it big. And it's okay to just have like a low key middle class life, and you can get into construction and not have all the stresses and all the weight of the world, and you can make a living for you and your family, your dog, if you want to have kids, whatever it may be, and you can still have a good lifestyle and you can be happy. And you don't need to make $1 million a year. You don't have to have a huge chunk of cash sitting in your bank account. You can have a good life doing this and be happy, whether it's a family business or not. And I think that it's just important to note that, because I think so many people that the point of entry into our industry, it's always pays an issue. You're not going to make that much money, you know, and maybe you being a good example that like you can still have a good life and a happy life and have fun on the job and not, you know, you're not going to be rich ever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that attributes to like what we see, and you know, we open this podcast talking about how happy you guys are on the job every day, and it might not be that the fact that like you guys are just always smiles, but it's the fact that you guys, it's clear that you genuinely enjoy what you do, but you also do it with little stress, and that I think that's very different. Like Tyler said, everyone is going for, you know, the
quick buck.
Yeah, the $1 million salary, not the, you know, middle class salary.
Well, they're going for a lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, and that's probably something to do with social media, is that everyone sees the shiny stuff and they chase it. But I mean, the hardest part is finding what your niche is in life beyond work, just what you're comfortable with, and then figuring out how you're going to pay for those means.
Right, and it's not saying that the luxury lifestyle is bad. It's just being okay with the fact that you don't need that. You know, being okay with the fact that like I don't need to make that much money, or I don't need that shiny car, and understanding that that's a good avenue for anyone that wants to go down that path.
Well, I think it's two things. I think it's awesome that Tim is able to say that, hey, this industry has not only brought his family before him, his parents, a great lifestyle that he's never really, you know, been like, oh, I wish I had something else. You could still have that. You just got to, frame another house, an extra house this year? I mean, you can do that, but still have a great lifestyle and not change anything. I just think it's, what I'd love to know is how, like, I think I'm searching for that formula. Like, yeah, I could do 7 houses again next year and be absolutely going crazy. Do I build the team or do I throttle down? Like, Tim, who created that formula? Was it Dad, as you put it, that kind of made it like you guys are going to do 7 houses this year? Like, who created that formula? Like, right now, you guys are rolling. Are you guys thinking about taking on 10 for 2019? Like, what is that kind of maybe the business end of it? Maybe a question for your brother, but from the outside, how are you looking at it from your end of the business? Like, you get me?
Yeah. So Dad has always been very frugal. for example, we all learned to drive stick on Goldie, which was a 1984 little Toyota pickup. And that he bought it brand new. He knew right off the bat is invest in tools, invest in the equipment so that you're not spending a ton of downtime, right? I feel so bad for you, Tyler, watching this whole thing with Ford. I mean, look at how much time that costs. And so he figured that out growing up on a farm, they jury rigged everything. And you spent more time in the shop than you actually spent farming because they could never afford the good equipment. So he's always understood, instead of driving the flashy truck, put the money into the equipment so that you can get your work done. You get your work done, you're going to get paid, right?
Yeah.
You don't get paid every time you're sitting. That's what I said with rain gear. Spend money on rain gear because every day you're sitting at home, you're not making money.
Yeah.
So he's the one that kind of set that. I don't feel like he ever set these big goals because he's the bean counter. He always just knew what he needed to cover overhead. And I don't know that he's ever really set a goal per year for any given year. Brian, we were just talking a couple hours ago at this point, that all we want to do is take on enough work to pay for overhead, put money in the bank to be able to buy land and plan the next jobs, and have a cushion for the next time the market crashes. And then in order to do that, if all of us live not over the top, and that way, if times get lean, that's okay. We don't have all these bills and a ton of debt. So that's just been his mentality, is he would pay things off as quickly as he could. He wouldn't spend it frivolously. So what got us through the recession was him buying so much land cheaply that our cost basis was low. The little development that we've been building in, it's a golf course community, they had punched in a road and it was supposed to be a little higher end. And of course, nobody was buying the lots. And so he got those lots, a screaming deal. And that kept us busy for, would we build one or two on that street for maybe 10 years? Kept us busy. So he had the cost basis. So that's the thing about Dad and Brian's in his footsteps. They're thinking in terms of numbers that are actual and not just dreams, or this is what I'd like to see. This is the image I would like to present. It's no, where's the data? Is this a good decision or a bad decision? And let the data drive the decision. And overall, it's been pretty good.
It's my kind of.
I feel like most guys, it's like the numbers are there, and you're like, well, we'll just make it work.
Yeah,
and you're making it work, and like you make every job work, and then you walk away from it, and you're like, what do I have to show for this? You made it work, and it looks good, and everything else. But I think that's a testament to what he's doing. That there's more to it than just like, yeah, let's get through this, let's make it work. Show me where those numbers are and how we can actually sustain on this, rather than just like, well, it's this job, let's get through this job, make this job work.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of builders. I know a lot of guys, and myself included, there's been jobs where it's like, all right, I got to make this work and we'll move on. And that's where, where I'm at in my business is that's not where I'm my strong suit. The number, like, I don't want to be chasing down numbers and budgets all day. Like, that's just not where I'm a creative mind. So, with the people that I've hired in the past few months have been people that can implement that. And I think that's super important to note that, like, you're in the field, you're not doing the numbers. Brian's doing the numbers, and you guys are separated. And when you have that intermingled, like, not that it doesn't work, but everyone has their strong suit. And if you're, if I'm good at being creative and kind of okay doing the books, then the books are only going to be kind of okay.
Yeah.
Indefinitely. And I think that's where, at least, like, I'm speaking personally, like, that's where I've failed, is that I've tried to take on scope of work within my own business that I'm not good at. And that's why I got to a point where I was like, all right, I need to hire someone that's good at this, because otherwise it's just going to be kind of okay.
Yeah, I wish we could go back in time, and I would love for you guys to interview Dad in, 1985 or 1988 or whatever, because as it got busier, he had to hire the bookkeeper, and my uncle was a CPA. He did the taxes for years. And I bet you guys could commiserate a lot better than I can with you, because he was there, basically the same position you're in.
So your dad, obviously a frugal mind, and the way that he's approaching his business, it's very tight and calculated, and he's not spending frivolously, which means he's probably not building frivolously, not putting too much into these houses that you're selling.
And see, that's the toughest thing, because we hand cut the roof. The biggest thing I think that we've struggled with in the last 10 years is we've got an attic that has nothing in it, no truss webbing. Well, let's build. I mean, the house they're living in, I tried to talk him out of it. He swears I didn't, but we all tried to. I mean, we essentially have, it's about 6,300 square feet with a basement, and then we've built into the attic. So from the street, you'd think it was a 1,500 square foot, 2,000 square foot house. But we've used every ounce of space in that house because it's there. And that's what's kind of gotten us into trouble a few times, where we're just like, yeah, who's going to buy this house? Thankfully, people have, but we just start pushing into there and dialing back. That's kind of where we're resetting now is, okay, what is it? At what point are we putting too much into it than somebody's willing to pay for? You know, especially when our competitors aren't doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that you kind of have to sustain, is to figure out what's going to sell. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're building spec. Like John gets himself into trouble writing spec that's too ambitious, you know, and then he's putting too much money into it, or, you know, me overbuilding, Nick overbuilding, how to kind of walk that line where you're not necessarily overbuilding, you're putting the things into it that are going to sell it. But at the same time, at the end of the day, there is a bottom line and you want to make money. And I think that kind of segues into the way that you guys are building. And even I know there was discussion about framing to tolerance and how much time and effort that you're going to spend at that point wasting on something that may not matter. Do you want to at least enlighten people what framing to tolerance is, the kind of reasons behind it, and your theories as to what that, you know, why you only should have to go, you know, if it's the 95%, why that final 5% you're kind of wasting and banging your head against the wall for you're not getting a return on that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. We can only build to the tolerances of the materials that we're using. So if we're using all engineered lumber, it's probably conceivable that everything could be dead on plumb. It won't move as much. Let's say like Matt Reisinger's house with all the LVL studs. You might pay 6 times more for that, right? So then therefore the tolerances should be as tight as possible. But I mean, you see the job sites we're working on right now. The house gets just absolutely saturated. And then on top of it, we could get snow, and then it might sit under snow for a while, and then that will melt. And so we do our best to frame as tight as possible, knowing that after we're gone, as it dries and as the weather hits it, it's going to move it around a little bit anyway. So my philosophy is that's like we're using laser plumb bobs. When we gang cut things, now you're using bigger saws or things that will allow you to cut more. What was the expression Mark Hendrickson used? Identical snowflakes. Yes. Our goal, which I think that's so great. You do everything you can do to make things as accurate as you're doing it, and then you try to tune that before you leave. But then there's a point where you just say, this was the best we could do with what we've got.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, but I think the disconnect, or what's different about what you're saying, is that a lot of guys will say, well, it's going to move, so it doesn't need to be perfect now.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be perfect later, why make it perfect now? And that's the wrong mentality. You're going, okay, what if it doesn't move?
Yeah.
What if it dries out and everything stays exactly where it is?
Yeah.
Why, they weren't putting their best foot forward to begin with, and that product never had a chance to be good.
The hardest people that we've had that have framed with us is we've had finish carpenters in the past, and when maybe the house wasn't ready for finish carpentry, they'd come out and frame with us. And those guys, and I know Kyle's going to laugh when he hears this, we could not get those guys to tighten up the framing. Like a windowsill. We want that. Like a lot of times we will frame the entire window itself and then put the header in last. And that way you can still pull the king stud trimmers tight, get that sill nice and tight, then shove the header in. We'll use structural screws to draw those in. And we could not get the finish carpenters to do it. They're like, it's not a big deal. And it wasn't for them. They're just like, yeah, we'll compensate for it. Yeah, but I don't want people walking around seeing gaps everywhere. Sometimes that's going to happen, but start out getting it as accurate as you can do it. Use good tools, use the right techniques. We do all of our layout now with lasers. The old 3-4-5 method where we would use our scientific calculator and extrapolate. Now just set up the laser and be done with it, and then reset every floor you go up. The guy that taught me, he was always like, try to start over as often as possible. And that way, if you do have, let's say, I remember Don Dunkley, who used to write for JLC and runs JLC Live. I think he was telling me one day that they showed up on a foundation in California. It was like 5 inches out of square. You can't possibly fix that all in one shot. You just keep reducing it. And he said, by the end, you can make it disappear. These things are possible. It's just, you have to get creative sometimes. But if you reset at every stage, then you never get that mistake. So maybe they squared their footing, but then didn't double check when they set up their walls. Well, they might've been able to get half or all of it back on the walls. Then the framers come in on the mud sill and they can get another half of it back. Then on your walls layout, you get another half of it back. Pretty quick, you're right back within perfect tolerance.
I mean, being able to reset like that, you're not copying the mistake over and over again.
Exactly.
My boss is the same way.
At that point, you're chipping away at it.
And you don't catch it if you're just copying it.
Yeah. So I think the important thing to note there too you're not using any of that. You have rain coming in, you have snow coming in. You're not using that as a crutch. You're just understanding that how that is going to affect what you're doing. And there's like a point where, it's diminishing returns where you could spend 3 more hours trying to get that one thing perfect, but that's not going to be perfect at the end. So it gets to the point where are customers willing to pay that? Is it responsible of you to have your customers pay for that? Or is it like, hey, let's get them in at this budget. They're still going to get the same finished product. It's going to be on the back end that they could finish that or tighten those things up and make it all appear as if everything was perfect, and you're getting your foot in the door. Your customers aren't paying for something that's unnecessary. And I think it's a good way to strike that balance. And it does start with you, but you're not using any of that as a crutch. You're not coming out and saying, well, not going to be perfect. Screw it. Just put it up. Doesn't matter. They'll fix it.
I was taught, the places that you pay more attention to as a framer, obviously plumb level and square, but if you know that it's a cabinet wall, then be extra critical on the studs you're using. The framer that taught me, they would do some finish work, and a finish carpenter taught him years ago that make it for finish work, make everything look perfect. Because once somebody's sitting on it, if you can see it from the toilet, make it look perfect, because you got somebody that might sit there for a while staring. In other words, sometimes you just spend more time in certain areas because those are going to be the ones that get the attention. So use the nicer studs on a cabinet wall. But if you have to hide the ugly studs in a closet somewhere, then just do it and move on. If they're that bad, get rid of them. But if they're crowned, they're not perfect. There's places to hide them that it won't show up. So then do it. You can't. We're still here to provide a product, and we can't just keep charging more money because we're spending more time on it.
I think the other side of that is, and I love the excuse part, meaning so many people, that's what's great about your stories, Tim, besides the energy and all that, is that I bet you 90% of the kids that watch your stories, they wouldn't actually work in the conditions that you're working in. They would just all wake up that morning and go, it's raining, not going in today.
Yeah.
And that's it. But I think the other side of that is that we're not talking about is, you alluded to that you worked in a development for 10 years. If you took those tolerances that were really, really loose on house 1 and 2, you're not probably going to be able to continue building 10 years deep in that same street, in that same punch out of a street that you have.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes to, I really, like you said about your dad, is that the systems that were put in place that you guys are now still using and still methodically growing off of, that's really the secret there, the secret sauce. Not to mention the mindset that your entire family has that, I think a lot of companies, throw the family thing out of it. If there's one guy in the office, the guy in the field doesn't see the value in the guy in the office. And there's usually a lot of confrontation there, meaning I'm doing all the lumping, I'm doing all the heavy work, and you're in an office. And that happens in almost every company, that someone sees that where they're being undervalued. And I think I wish we could unbox that in a way that everyone could understand how that mindset is with you guys, because that's unbelievable. Between the weather, the tools, whatever it is, you guys, excuses don't really come into play, and it's always a smile. That's what I love about your stories.
Yeah, and I would say that started with Dad, and we're a fairly happy family. We definitely have our moments, and it's not to say that we don't deal with anxiety or depression and other things. This great climate's not easy. I'm fortunate. Kyle and I have found, and I always say it, and I think people think I'm partially kidding. Good music makes all the difference on these really ugly days. But growing up, like my parents were always so reasonable. We could skip school as long as our grades were good and go up snowboarding. So, lift tickets were $15 on a Monday and our grades were good. And Dad's like, let's go up. And so it was always balanced. Yes, you work hard, but because you've put in the time, now you get to enjoy yourself too. So it's not just 7 days a week and be stressed all the time.
I know
Give it your best, make it fun, and then enjoy yourself.
I know you have a dog, but is that the same for your brother right now with having kids? Is he still having the same balance? Has anything changed?
No, and I wish I would have gone. They went up snowboarding on Saturday evening, and his boy Ethan, what is Ethan, 2011? He's 8 or 9. So he's snowboarding. Little Reedy is 2, is he 3? He's on skis. So Brian is good about making sure family time. When I called him today, he was picking up Ethan from school, and that's how Dad was. I used to have to shift for him because he had one of those old cellular brick cell phones in the 80s. Yeah. He'd be on the phone and I'd have to shift for him. He'd drop me off at school. That's awesome. It was great. He had that thing forever. Yeah. So that's just the mentality. Family comes first. It should, Our society is one of chaos now because the family unit's not very strong. Yeah. And if we put in the time with our family, then everybody around us benefits too. It's been pretty cool for us to have such long-standing relationships with our subs too, where like our heating sub, he'll hear, somebody will say, oh yeah, I follow the Pioneer guy on Instagram. And he'll tell him stories about how bad the framing was. He likes to make it sound like it's really horrible when I was 18 or 17. But now we've all been together so long that when we're dealing with clients, I think they pick up on that it's the family. I mean, everybody still calls me Timmy. Our subs call me Timmy. I think even some of the inspectors do. We've all been together so long now. One of our inspectors a year ago comes out and he just looks at me up and down. He goes, you gaining weight? I was like, no, Jerry, I've actually lost some weight. Thanks, buddy.
It's just the shorts.
Yeah, I was just like, all right. Get your eyes fixed, buddy.
Then I did a nice long lunge in front of him.
Yeah.
I don't know if I heard it on a forum or a magazine or Fine Home Building at some point, but somebody said if you want to be a framer, you should be a finished carpenter first, which I don't know. Framing is probably where I have the least amount of experience. It's nothing I ever did. It's nothing I've ever been around. It's always been remodeling. So seeing guys frame has always blown my mind. What you guys do, I feel like is so difficult and it's so heavily math dependent. And you have to be able to see what that finished product's going to be like while you're framing it. You have to have an idea of how trim's going to come together and everything else. Because if that's not planned for and accounted for, then your frame's not you're just going to screw whoever's coming down the road. Yeah. Even nailers and everything else. But I think that even though I don't have the experience, that saying has always seemed like that would make sense. Mm-hmm. Just because you would know what's going to be important, what's not going to be important, where you should spend time, where you don't need to. And like you said, sitting on a toilet or a cabinet wall or using certain studs in certain places, which I feel like if you didn't have finished product in mind or what that whole build consists of and the tolerances that you need, that you would just kind of be going through the motions and getting things put together. And essentially what people have a lot of that attitude where it's well, the framer screwed me down the road. The framer didn't do this, framer didn't do that. Which it seems like you're able to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're proceeding.
It helps being that we've lived in 1,000 Pioneer houses. I mean, since Nikki and I got married in 2000, I think I counted the other day. We've moved mom and dad probably 10 times because they would just move into the house that wasn't selling. And mom's like, great, now I get to redecorate. And then they wait 2-3 years and then do it all over again. Well, you figure out real quick what mistakes you make when you keep living in your own house. Like, I'm living in a house we built back in 2002, and I have to keep repairing trim because we didn't flash our windows properly. We didn't know back then. And nobody had window flashing until in this area. I think I used to have to special order Vicor in 2001, 2000. You know, I'd read these JLC articles. There was a Joe Stebrick article on how all windows leak. Turns out they do eventually. So got to flash them properly. Well, back then we didn't have the products that we have now. It feels weird for me to say that. I'm only 41, but it's like so much has changed in the last 10 years that, I mean, I know our framing has changed. We use a lot more structural screws than we used to because they're easy, because we have the cordless impactors now. I mean, today I'm running around with nothing but cordless tools in the rain. I'm not tripping on cords. I can't believe where we're at compared to 10 years ago. And so it just allows us to do a lot more.
Was that unique to you guys, or are all the builders in your area, you know, upgrading the way they're building?
It's unique to us. Yeah. But I'm fortunate because writing for JLC, that first article was on siding, but the second article was I got to review a bunch of saws because Dave came up and spent the day photographing, you know, a couple of days with us. And he's just like, you guys want to review? We haven't done all the skill saws and so I've always been able to be a little ahead on that because I have access to the tools. Mm-hmm. And then because we don't have a tool budget, then Dad's like, well, we bought a cordless rebar tire a few years ago. That's a $2,500 gun. But now when we tie bar in a basement, it's like one of us holds it while the other guy just comes along zipping it, and you just trade off, and it is 5 times faster. So it's paid for itself.
Right.
It's funny, even with the impact guns. I remember my dad would do a deck, and it was before any of the Fastmaster ledger locks or anything like that. So it was all carriage bolts. Or if he had like a mud sill coming up that he was putting the bolt head on, he had a worm drive drill. And then he had a socket that he took I feel like the only way I can compare it is it was an Allen key that he cut the head off of and then whacked it into the socket and put that on his worm drive. Like that's how he was tightening up like the anchor bolts. And I mean, my dad was he was more extreme than frugal. He was cheap. And it was just like make do with what you have. But anything I do a deck now, and it's get a Fastmaster bolt, and you need an impact gun and your hand. You know, and before it's like my dad's like, get the cord out, get the worm drive, go get my homemade bit, and then break your wrist as soon as you catch it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's crazy. But to even think about like how much time, and like I know if my dad were still doing this today, there's no doubt in my mind he would still use carriage bolts because like, oh, they're cheaper, you know? Like I can get a carriage bolt, and that's just his mentality and thinking, and doesn't realize the labor savings. But it is crazy how the ability that you could progress, and it did happen very quickly. Like the products and the tools and everything else changed almost overnight.
It did, yeah. In 2014, Dave had me write up for Tools of the Trade. He said, as you're using tools, take pictures of them. Let's do an article on your most commonly used tools. And then last year, I think it was spring of 2017, we rewrote the article because we realized not one of those tools did we use. In that intervening 2 years, all of a sudden with these brushless motors and the lithium ion batteries, I mean, we can cut rafters now with a battery powered saw, and it only takes 45 minutes to reach. I can't even believe how much easier it is. Now, when we roll out one cord to a beam saw and we trip over it, that's when you see us lose our smile, because tripping, you just think, how did we used to have 5 guys with cords and hoses and all the subs? None of our subs use corded tools now. The electricians walk around with longer bits, auger bits, and they just walk around drilling it's nothing.
Everyone's got chargers plugged into every single outlet.
Yeah. Like I know we're running a generator on this job site, and it literally powers the compressor and the chargers.
It's like Kyle from R&R, he posted the other day all the batteries he uses in a day or a week or something.
Yeah.
And it was just it was
Tubs.
Yeah.
He had like, I mean, there had to be a minimum of 50 batteries in that. And it's just to think he builds buildings like that. Like you can build a whole house, you can build a whole barn. Like it's all cordless, and that like, to Tyler's point, it happens so quickly. And I mean, even a year ago, I mean, each year it progresses so quickly. I know every one of my guys bought that the cordless Makita skill saw because they were like, we're done with cords. I don't want to deal with cord, and this thing is a beast.
Yeah, I keep wondering what skill saw is going to do. You know, that company's traded hands a number of times, and I forget the latest company that bought them off of Bosch. And they're developing some great tools and things, but I'm just like, yeah, but you have to plug them in. You don't plug things in anymore.
Right.
It's like now we can walk around with an inspector on a framing inspection, and with a cordless nail gun and saw, if he notices something, even if we don't think it's legitimate, just do it.
Right.
Yeah. We've got him there. It might be another 2 weeks before we get him back. Just get it done. And then let's go home, pass inspection. It's so easy now. So I always feel like too for Instagram, because I am fortunate, I get lots of manufacturers are willing to send stuff. I don't think anybody will send it without me asking, but I'll make requests because it's something I feel that we could use. And then if we can use it, then I'll post how it works, and then other people can make a decision. They don't have to buy that brand, but at least now they can see how it functions. I
think there's the authenticity there. I don't see you as a tool reviewer, which is a big difference because especially the Instagram market, you know, there were a couple big names and they're still there and they're still very present. And I respect those accounts. There's so many people who hopped on board for free tools. And like you said, if you need a tool, you might as well ask for it, see what happens. But then you're giving an honest opinion of that. It's not, if people can use it, they can kind of take it. You're putting it out there, and like people can make the decision whether they think it's a good purchase or not a good purchase. You're not sitting there with your saw saying this is the best saw I've ever used. Yeah. When it's not, because somebody sent it to you. How's that conversation with manufacturers? Like, hey, like you had just said, hey, I can try this out, and then it fits into my content. If I like it, we'll explain it. Or like, are there promises there? Or is it like, you know, say somebody sends you something and you completely hate it, we're just not going to post about it?
So far, what's the last thing we hated? I never make a promise. I always, except for, I'm going to be honest. I don't even promise to post anything. I'm trying to think, the only tools I've requested are things like reciprocating saws, or I've got a Stabila laser level I'm looking for, rotary laser I'm looking forward to trying out for the next foundation. I feel like I have an advantage over a lot of other guys because I'm affiliated with 2 magazines. And usually I'm at arm's length and I work through the editor. It's only been the last, probably since Chris got his new job, that I've actually dealt with the manufacturers direct. So I always went through a magazine employee just to kind of keep it arm's length. But I don't think I've made any promise, and I've certainly never been paid by a tool company or manufacturer. I always tell them, I'm willing to be paid. I absolutely would be willing to be paid. But
I think that's interesting because I always thought, you said you've never been paid by that. I figured that was just kind of standard, whether it was paid for, not even just to say anything about it or post about it, but just kind of like, hey, we're going to give you free stuff. Here's a little bit of money. Like, I don't know. It's I think that makes you unique.
Well, and so for anything that I write for JLC that gets published, JLC, Hanley Wood has to pay me. Anything for tools of the trade, they don't pay for tool reviews anymore. But I have a real strong sense of loyalty toward Hanley Wood because those guys, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff if it wasn't for JLC, and especially David Frayne. Dave's a cool guy. He's retired now. So I don't mind throwing content their way. If it's work boots or whatever, that way they can kind of keep content current on their website. It doesn't take me long to write. They said that they prefer for blog posts that they're under 500 words. And that just doesn't take very much time to write. So I definitely don't mind doing it. I kind of feel like that's the least I can do for the privilege of trying out tools that I otherwise would never get to try out.
Right.
And then on the other hand too, like when Mark Martinez came back with his new hammer, because I was affiliated with the magazines, I got one of those first hammers to try out. And the first day I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I decided I'd use it for a month, switch back to the other one, let all the guys use it. And that way my review would be unbiased. You know, I didn't have a relationship with him. It was a phone call. Mm-hmm. It was like the 10th hammer he had made, you know, I mean, he didn't have any. So that was pretty cool. Then, any of the stuff that we're using now, like I did ask Makita for the rebar tire so I could compare it to the Max. So I still have to write that up. So yeah, there's no money in tool reviews to my knowledge. I know a lot of guys get to go on the free trips and it never works for my schedule. I'd like to go, you know, kind of get the first reveal, that kind of thing. But we're locked into our schedule, so it's hard to get away.
Sure. I love your priorities.
I also think it benefits you because I think that then you're just like everyone else. You're doing the same. You're not doing anything different than anyone else. You're a tool reviewer. You're at the Milwaukee show. You're at like World of Concrete, and there's already enough of that out there. Mm-hmm. And as you said, you're not getting paid, and you're not promoting anything. You're not even promising that it's going to fit into your content. It's, you know, if you want to send me something and I can write something up, or, you know, if it works for me, it works for me. And I think that's very transparent through your content and through your Instagram handle and what you're doing. I think personally, I would stick with that route. You know, maybe it would fit it'd be nice to go somewhere, do something, but I think that what you're doing, it's very authentic.
Well, I appreciate that, because from the inside, I don't know how it's viewed. You know, I see some accounts where I'm just like I said before, you know, it's the guy in flip-flops using a chainsaw in the backyard. You know, why does anybody follow that? But they do. So, but you guys can tell, you know, Awesome Framer started out as a joke, and we try to post tips and things that we've learned. Other people can improve on them, but it's just there to keep us interested in our job every day. You know, it's just fun. So
you guys do a good job telling your story, but you're also doing a good job portraying that, you know, what you do you love, and that the fact that you're willing to share. I mean, you said you don't know how it's viewed being on the inside. I think it's viewed as extremely I lost my train of thought.
Positive
was the word I was looking for.
No, it's very discreet, where like I have one video coming to my mind where you set the camera up high and you were cutting the stairs, and you're doing one thing, and Kyle is doing the other thing, and I'm like, there's so many guys that the other guy would be standing there waiting for the other guy to cut. And I've seen it on all sorts of job sites, and I just loved how it's such a simple video. When I just read so into it that it's like, these guys are just hammering away. They're in their own zone. And to me, had been a framer for years, that it was so, like, I so remember that, like, just get lost. The music blaring, you're in your own world. Yeah. You're not more than 6 feet apart from each other, but you're just you're thinking about whatever you want. I think this industry, I keep saying industry, but let's just say carpenter, is such a thinking game. Meaning, when you can think about anything, you can overthink. Like when I was in high school, overthinking a girlfriend. When I'm like cutting a roof, I'm up there on the roof plywooding it, and it's like my mind is like going everywhere else. And it's such, and I have to say I love that about this industry. Today, I still do it. Like if I can not have my phone on me, and I can go, like, the last thing I did was that island detail, and the radio's going, like, dude, hours, I think days would go by in my life all day, if I could do that. Like, just like that. My girlfriend at the time, was phenomenal, where when I was finishing my second to last house, I was doing all the trim, because all day you'd manage guys, and I would be doing work at the same time, but you wouldn't get a lot done. And then from like 5 o'clock to like 2 in the morning, that was like my day, woodworking. And my wife would, I don't even know if texting was happening then. And she'd be like, hey, when are you going to be home? And I'm like, I'll be home in like an hour. But she never got pissed at me like 6 hours later when I didn't show up, because it wasn't like I was cheating, I was drinking, I was doing anything. I was literally just making sawdust and in my happy space for like 6 hours and didn't realize it was 2 a.m. And when I watch your videos,
I think I'm super envious of that.
Yeah.
And I think this discussion has just kind of solidified at least my thoughts in that, like, where your priorities are and what's important and the structure behind that allows you to live the lifestyle that you do and remain. And I know you keep saying you have your moments, which we all do. I think a lot of people have much larger moments than you might.
Because it's pure chaos, like Tim said earlier. It's like you're getting
it
pulled.
doesn't have to be.
No, that's why I'm so envious is a great word, is that not just how much fun you're having, how you display it, it's also the structure and systems that you have, whatever you adopted from your father and whatever you adopted from the mentors that you've had that created even a better environment and culture for you now. I wish you could bottle it up and send that out UPS to everybody.
Yeah.
That's what I love about watching your stuff. Like, I actually, when you're wearing the stuff, I'm like, God, how's his hands like the rain? Like, that always blew my mind. I remember working through all that crap, and it's like my fingers would be so pruny. But then I watch his videos, and I'm like, I bet you he's totally fine. And I'm like, I struggled days where my fingers were like fat and like just totally like saturated.
I think that goes back to his, Tim's comment about his dad is like investing in equipment, because I know, like, I can speak, I don't have a raincoat or a coat with a hood, right? But the moment I buy it, it's stupid. I know it's such a stupid piece of knowledge. But the fact, like, the moment I do have one, or I buy a nice raincoat and I'm out in the rain and it works, like my world changes. And it's like finding a nice pair of gloves that work in the winter. It's like I would buy gloves upon gloves because my hands they'd always be cold. And finally I found a pair of gloves that I could work with, and I'd work all day. It's like going, it's like going snowboarding and your feet freeze and you put the toe warmers in and your feet don't freeze the whole day, and you can do 20 more runs than you thought you could because your feet don't cramp up. And it's investing in like a little extra effort to make sure that you're buying the right equipment, or in that case hand warmers or feet warmers, to increase the longevity of your performance, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he thinks in dollars and cents. So what's the opportunity cost of not being able to work? Mm-hmm. Now, how many days can you do that before you go, had I bought that rain gear, I could have worked all week.
Right.
And that's just the mentality. I was fortunate enough that that's just his mindset. He's one of 8 kids. So you can imagine how that was on a farm in southwestern North Dakota. There's not enough to go around. So he figured out real quick, when you're handing the shoes down the line, get a good pair of shoes.
I don't know any of the guys outside that's the moment it rains, I get the call, hey, won't be there today. Or, hey, can we work is there anything that we can do inside? It's like not even an option.
No.
Also, probably his climate, pretty much, if you didn't work when it was raining, you'd probably not be working.
But it's like here, it's like cold.
Of the year.
But it's cold. And then it's like, it's too cold to work today.
It's too cold today.
I got the call, it's too windy. I'm like, and it's like, I mean, it's maybe I gotta audit some of them, but I mean, okay, what if I bought you rain gear or wind gear? Like, would you work then?
No, I think it's really people. John touched on it just now. Tim, I'm touching on it. It's opportunity cost. No one looks at it that way. That, hey, if you take off a month out of the year, whether it's 2 days this month, 10 days the next month, what are you losing? And I feel like I didn't really come to grips with that until I had kids. It sounds weird, but I didn't know that, like I said, I'd work till 2 a.m, and I had a girlfriend at the time, was my wife, maybe. I can't remember. But it was like when I wasn't having time for my kids, I really realized the opportunity. It was never put in the ups and downs of money for me, and because time was just, I would just work. It's all I ever knew. Mm-hmm. So, but having kids really brought a whole new dynamic where it was like, all right, I should be home. I feel like I'm going to miss this. And it was that opportunity that then I took that with the kids and then used that for business. Meaning, I remember when I was younger, we would do work and you'd take like the break at 10. You'd have lunch for an hour. You wouldn't bring lunch. You'd go and you'd take, you're like, I'm taking an hour. And then you'd have another break. And then I had a homeowner say to me once, because, you know, I was always hustling still when I wasn't doing it. And they're like, why wouldn't you want to hustle through this to get to the next one? And I'm like, and I was taught by the other guys on site that were more like a union, like we're taking these breaks. And they were like, because the next one will still be there. Whether it's 5 days from now, if we get done with this 5 days early, it doesn't matter. And I think about that day now, because now I'm like, I would crank through that to get to that one 10 days early, get to the next one 20 days earlier. And by the end of the year, that might be a whole nother job. But I think as an employee, we wouldn't see the benefit of it. So why would we put the effort in? And I think that's really tough. And I think Tim, understanding that, you know, it's a family-owned business for you is definitely true. I just don't know how good owners, like for your employee, Kyle, like how does he want to drive that? And I think it's really the culture. Why would he want to drive that hard with you? Work through all those days. It's really because one of the owners is right next to me. You know, you're not going to say something to him to do that you wouldn't do. It's like, hey, go sweep the deck off, and then you sit in your cab, and it's 64 degrees. Like, I think it's all about that culture. I'm amazed by it. I'm honestly, it's refreshing, because all the crap that we see out there, you know, I think it's lost.
Yeah, I was just fortunate because, I mean, my earliest memories were coming out to the job site with Dad cleaning up. And of course I hated it. You know, it was hard work. You're 12 years old cleaning up. And then you get older and you realize sometimes it's more fun to clean up because you can just turn your brain off. And it's very tangible when you're done. You're like, look how good that looks. He would still be doing that today if he didn't have, you know, arthritis in his back. And he'll still come out. We'll have to tell him, no, put it down. You know, you're going to pay for that tomorrow. That's just his mentality, is that he just wants to work. And I don't know how you get people to do that, to want to work.
But I think you said it right there, is that you realized it was hard work when you were little, but that defined hard work for you. No one gets defined hard work anymore. There's no one that gets up at 3 a.m. to do a paper route anymore, because paper routes are gone because everyone's looking at it on their phone. So what is the definition of hard work, and how are you being exposed to it? Is it writing a blog? Like, what is it that's hard work today for kids? Like for my kids. Like, what am I teaching them? So yeah, like my hardwood floor guy said to me today, I go, hey, I need to pick a hardwood floor for my study. Yeah, I started it 2 years ago. And I'm like, I need to get my hardwood floors in. And he's like, you know, I'll just send a crew over. And I go, I'm not going to lie to you, Danny, I have the flooring gun. I have it all. And I'm going to have my kids do the floor with me. It's not because I know I can call you and have you do it, and I appreciate that offer. It's more like, this is an opportunity for me as a parent to define hard work for these kids. Because, yeah, we're in we're like the 1% of America where the bubble's not going to be as hard when it pops for us that it will be for the rest of the country. It's facts. And it's just, what are my kids really going through that's going to be all that tough? I bust my ass so it doesn't have to be as tough for them. So, like, their living room has huge bean bags and stupid stuff that I had milk crates and a bean bag that was probably 15 years too old, and there was no stuffing in it. Remember when I was little, I jumped in it thinking, I was like, yeah, and it was like hardwood flooring right there.
John just had like a solid flashback.
No, I get pissed off at my kids that, like, I know what I grew up with and I know what they're growing up with, and it irks me daily that, like, what am I exposing them to? And that's why it's funny. I talk about movies, and I'm like, I want them to watch Stand By Me. I want them to watch Tim the Toolman Tula, you know, MacGyver, A-Team. I want them to be exposed to the same things that I was, that shaped me.
Don't forget the old Airwolf too.
Yeah, know, but it's like that stuff didn't exist. So my kids are like, what is this stuff? And I want them to be exposed to the same stuff I was, because, like your parents, Tim, that you shape that stuff. Like, if you take a whole different route to make it easy for them, then what are their challenges going to be? You know, I'm not trying to do it so, like, it's a more privileged life. I remember a simple story I'll give you. It's kind of hockey related, but so I went to school. I went to school, and one of my best friends, we played hockey our entire lives together. Okay, he went to juniors, I went to college, and I thought it was I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought, hey, he then came to the same school as me a year later. I was like, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to set you this up, set that up. You know how much the kid like was like an absolute because I was taking away all the things that were little challenges that made college what they were, instead of, you know, it was those little ambiances that I was like, oh, you want to do this? Get these books, get that book. He never struggled to find the bookstore. He never struggled to find science class where your butterflies were going nuts because you were the last guy in class because you couldn't find it, and it was embarrassing. Like that's like so now I'm more like with my kids. I'm like, no, we're gonna put the floors in. You know, you're gonna mow the lawn. You know,
John was out back. John was out back dumping the beans out of the bean bag last night.
I don't know.
Rocks in there.
This whole podcast is. I mean, it's going down a whole different route than I think a lot of people anticipate. But it hits so many nerves with me, that especially with my kids, that what defines hard work to them, and what are they going to?
Well, I had it a lot easier than my dad. I mean, he grew up on a farm, you know, and when he got done with his chores, he'd go work other farms. I didn't have to do that. I had a self-propelled lawnmower to mow the lawn.
Your kids have it easier than you.
His dog.
So I don't know. For us, he just set the example. I think whatever your job is, if you set the example, being hard. I mean, my wife, she's a nurse. She's worked in some doctors' offices with some really self-centered doctors, let's put it that way. And she just always made the best of it and got along. Now she's starting a new job next week where she's got to essentially take phone calls with medical records, and everybody that calls her will already be frustrated. But every office that she's worked in, she always rises to the top because she tries to be easy to be around and she tries to work hard. You know, so there's nursing, construction, it's whatever somebody's in. I don't know how you instill that. I think it has to start with the parents. And maybe in some rare cases, they figure it out later because maybe they click with somebody that they're working with and that teaches them. But you guys have kids, you know, you set the example, the kids can follow.
I got a question for you on that note. What does your dad, being that it's a different generation than you, what does he think about your affiliation with the magazines? Like kind of the route that you've taken? I know that your business, it's not like that's a marketing tactic for your business, but the way that you engage with the community, is he supportive of that? Has it been like, hey, you're wasting your time? I know for me, I could turn to my dad and tell him what I'm doing, and it'd just be like, what the heck are you doing that for? Like, you're wasting your time. That doesn't make any sense.
Both. So he's proud of it. You know, it's cool. But sometimes he's like, you guys, he used to really give us a hard time on the Instagram thing. So we blocked him on Instagram. You don't get to see it anymore. You can look at it on Mom's. Because
my God.
He would say, you know, okay, so how long does it take you to make a video? And I said, well, think about it, Dad. They're either 15-second stories or they're 1-minute videos. If they take longer than that, then I'll just do it after work or at lunch. Oh, okay. I thought it was taking 3 or 4 hours. It's like, no, the value is not that.
He's crunching the numbers.
10 takes to try and get it. And so he's been around when we've done stories before and posts, and he's like, oh, okay. So he's supportive of it now that he understands it better. But we still haven't unblocked him.
So funny.
What's his handle?
He's got a private account, so we'll leave it.
We'll leave it off.
That's so funny. My dad is not on Instagram.
Well, he hasn't figured out how to tag people. So like if he wanted to tag Awesome Framers, he would hashtag Awesome Framers.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's his post. He's got a good sense of humor. Some of his posts are pretty clever.
Old people on Instagram is pretty entertaining. I think Steve showed me his grandmom is on Instagram. She's got, I think, 3 pictures. 2 of them are the same exact picture. Like one posted, then one in between them, then reposted the same picture. And then this middle one is a picture. I think of a tissue on the ground, and the caption, "We're at the doctor's office, not our tissue." It's like she probably took it and thought that she sent it, like texted it to someone, and it posted on Instagram. He's like, she has no idea what she's doing on this thing. So funny.
So we're ending.
Could be the longest pause of the.
I was just gonna let it go. I love the awkward pause. I'm just gonna watch.
I'm usually always stepping over people's toes because I want to get rid of the pauses, but I'm just trying to back off.
I'm going to say the same thing I've said on the last few, is that every one of these podcasts, I leave here thinking about everything I do.
It's a therapy session.
Yeah.
All day.
And this is like I said, Tim, like this, or should we call you Timmy? Should we stick
Go
with,
for it. Yeah.
Stick with
My
Tim?
teachers called me Timmy. Yeah.
I think it certainly solidified what I thought about Awesome Framers and you. But it was comforting to hear, and I think the audience as well will really enjoy the fact that you talk about how you can be okay with like the middle class, like taking a decent salary and supporting your family. You don't need to build, super big homes or have the fancy truck, or there's ways to be happy and low stress and support your family. And I mean, obviously the market is different everywhere, but I think that can be applied to just about every market.
I mean, I'm taking away from that is that I think everyone wants to grow to a point, but I think what's really cool here is the systems, the methods,
Absolutely.
the culture, but the niche that they've created and they've stuck with has not just been like a phase. It's taken them through a recession. It's taken them through multiple generations. Like, that's something to be said there, that you don't need to keep looking. You can define it, put the numbers in place, execute, and then enjoy it. I mean,
it also goes against what a lot of people say, stats wise, is that, if you're going to lay people off or you're going to downsize, you're doomed. Like, you're prepare for failure. It's like they've adapted according to recessions.
If you go by the numbers,
they've always come out.
Well, no, if you go by the numbers, it's a business.
Right.
And I think if the numbers don't work, then you have to let that person go. And I've been in companies where I've said you got to let this person go, and then they hold on to them, and it's like they hold on to them into November, and it's like, well, now you got to keep them till Christmas. And then because you're not an absolute monster, then you take them through January, and then it's like now you're into the new cycle of taxes, and it's like, when do we let them go? And then I know there's an emotional attachment to people, and I get it, but it's still a business. And you have to look at the numbers. This is why this podcast is perfect, is that the numbers kind of, if you can set them up and then you can try and hit them, and if it works, then you're good. If not, then you have to move things around, and that's what's key. So if you have to let someone go, it's not on hard feelings. It's because the numbers don't work and you have to survive. And if you survive, they come back. And that's a huge thing. I think also in this podcast is that you don't have to be huge. You don't have to feed. I'm not looking right at you. You don't have to feed a monster, okay? You can just do your thing and define what you want to live with your life, not out of excess, and do that. And then it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't be a crazy monster you have to feed or chasing money. There's still, I'm sure it's still involved, but it doesn't have to be so compounded that your life seems like a chaos. And just because everything you see is chaotic doesn't mean you need to fall into that niche because everyone's doing it with peer pressure. And I mean, I'm just talking out of line here. That's what I'm going to respect here, is that I don't feel like I'm going too far off reservation by staying small, trying to define my niche, work with my numbers, knowing that it's worked for Tim and his family. Then maybe it works for me and my family going forward, knowing that, that culture is important. It's a good mix, to be honest with you, that the numbers, but your culture is fun, so that way you're able to work through those days. I guarantee if you went through that and you had a different person than Kyle, then it may be a whole different dynamic where you can't execute, you can't get stuff done. I still think it's amazing. We didn't talk about it. Talk about two-man crew with the lull. But dude, there's days where you're saying, "Hey," and I got this beam up nonchalantly.
Dude, I was gonna bring that up. He set like a gable wall. He was like, "Yeah, working alone today." I'm like, oh, "Okay."
You know when people would be like, "I'm gonna go sit in Dunkin' Donuts for like 6 hours and not do anything."
I didn't post it yesterday. The glue lamp I lifted up over the gable. I was like, "I'm gonna do this just to prove I can still do it." It all worked great. I knew what the machine could do. We've been using that machine for the last, 13 years. So, we know what it can do. The beam wasn't that heavy. It's just a lot more than I can lift. And up and over. And we've done enough with rigging and things that we're fine. I feel like we're finally getting it, where we're not redoing things 3 times. And then it's still, let's be honest, no matter how humble any of us are, we still kind of want to make sure the young guys respect us as we get older. So I want to be able to say to Kyle, yeah, you can have the flu, buddy. It doesn't stop me.
Still got it.
But I can only say that because nothing went bad.
Right.
Went bad. And we had one wall years ago, and I went out, put more braces on it, but it had snowed and the subfloor was so saturated that none of the braces held. And a big wind gust took a big wall and it ripped the sheeting that was overlapped on the rim. It left the bottom plate and it very gently laid it on the neighbor's house. Nobody was living there because I think they lost the house. And so there was like 2 dents in the trim. I went and knocked on the door. It was like some guy living in the basement. He's like, yeah, just fix it. I don't care. I think he was just maybe a family member living there. We went down, we replaced the 2 pieces of siding, small pieces of siding, color matched the paint. You'd never know. But I was like, you can't put too many braces on that if you think it's high wind. So that's the only near miss we've really had.
I was going to ask you, doing what you're doing, if there's been bad accidents on the job. I feel like if I was doing what you're doing, I'd fall off a ladder, walk off a deck, or smack myself with something every day, walking around in the rain.
0.
Really?
Yeah. Like we're getting into the fall protection stuff now and all that, but I was taught not to fall off roofs by not falling off roofs.
Yeah, it's a good way.
That's a good one.
Or by falling off of one, then you really learn.
Yeah, and it's like we just didn't ever have the culture of people that were just wild. You know, I hear stories of crews that just, there was a concrete crew locally that only years later did I find out. I mean, these guys would wake up to a speedball and then I think they do heroin at night to calm down. And you can only imagine then the risk that everyone around them unknowingly takes because these guys are just animals. They all end up dying, you know, either substance abuse or they fall.
Yeah.
You know,
I had a fall. Steve actually has a video of me on the ground, but I was planing the existing ceiling joist in like a kitchen flat, and I was on a 2-foot step ladder. My truck was in the shop or something. I didn't have my benches, and I went to step off the wrong side of the 2-foot step ladder. It was only single-sided step ladder. And I just like walked off of it as I was walking off normal, belt on, everything else, planer in my hand, and just fell flat on my face. And it was only from 2 feet up and just landed on the subfloor. I'm just laying there. Everything flew out of my belt. And Steve instantly gets out his phone because it's only 2 feet up, laughing. But I wake up every day. I'm ready to go for work. It's like, I don't drink, I don't party. And there's just so many opportunities at work to hurt yourself with what you're doing that I can't imagine. It's been so many years since I've showed up to a job site where I didn't feel good or was like hungover or whatever it may be, that like, I just can't imagine doing that with everything that we're doing these days.
Yeah.
Especially with you're doing, like, oh, let me just get in the crane and lift this beam overhead. I had a late night last night. Might want to stand back.
Yeah. I know. It's we used to show up, and anytime the concrete guys had been around, you'd find the beer bottles and everything. And it's like, I don't know how they function. Some of these guys that just drink nonstop.
They probably can't if they stop.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's like Dad said in college in his chemistry class. Whenever the teacher wasn't looking, they would just dump chemicals into the fish tank, and nothing would kill that fish until one day they changed the water, put the fish in fresh water, he died. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But he always tells the story that maybe sometimes it's better just to stay on the course you're on.
Yeah, probably.
Die.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. I had a crazy scare years ago where it wasn't even a scare. I laughed it off, but I think I was doing a side job for a guy, and we were roofing. And I was one of those mentalities that like he would then go to Dunkin' Donuts, and I'd be like, I'm gonna go strip the whole side of the roof. So when he gets back, he's like, dude, no way. But I remember we stripped the whole front, and then we'd stripped it. It was a low roof, no weather, and his idea. And I went back the next day to kind of run tar paper, and it's early. I forget what type of year it was. And ladders up. It's a ranch, so it's low. So I go up on the roof, and the sun had I wasn't even thinking. It was like music was going. And I was just kind of doing my thing. I grab 2 rolls of tar paper. I go up on the roof, and I'm going up the ladder, and the sun had only hit part of the roof to melt off the frost. And I didn't click with me yet that it was like, oh. So I get up on the roof, I take one step, and you can almost immediately feel like that slip. You know, you're waiting for traction, but it's not there. And I slipped on my right foot, but I still planted it. And then I knew I was going down. And I was like, all right. So I dumped the tarp. I was pivoting, dumped the tar paper over my shoulder, put my left foot onto the roof, and then I just jumped. And I just jumped, and I ended up landing into like a bush and somersaulted out. And I was laughing hysterically. And people had pulled over because they saw me just leap off the roof. And they were like, "You all right?" And I was laughing hysterically. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good." I didn't even then checked my ankle. I was like, "I'm actually fine." And you look at it now, I wouldn't jump off the top of a dumpster without like bracing myself. This was like twice the height. Right. And I looked at it for like the rest of the day. I'm like, I don't even know. Maybe it was adrenaline. I don't know, but it was just like,
it's funny.
And I was not drinking, nothing, just ready, adrenaline flowing. That was it for work. So I don't know how those guys operate.
I can picture like the feeling of, I know I'm going down, so I'm just gonna jump because it's my best option.
Well, it's like, you ever go on the side of like a pond and you're like messing around with ice or whatever, and then you find yourself ready to jump and you jump into the pond, like you're like leaning, and then you just go for it and you jump in the wrong way. Instance.
I had Steve back me up the other day, and it's like, back me in so I don't hit anything. So there's somebody parked in the driveway. He hops out of my truck and he just disappears. It's like, where did Steve just go? He stepped out of the truck and he must have hit some gravel or something. He went to get out of my truck and he was gone. I was like, what just happened? He's like, I don't know, man. I hit the ground. He came in sore the next day. I feel like the worst part, I've knock on wood, no serious injuries, but when you have falls like that and stuff on the job, did anyone see me? Like looking around to see, like I was mowing the lawn once and I got stung by bees. And like, if you've ever seen somebody mow the lawn and get hit like a beehive in the ground, like, what's going on, but it's just like, you can't hear anything. You just see somebody freaking out and running and like waving their arms. I just like ran into my house. I'm like, I hope nobody saw that. Just, you look ridiculous. That's probably the best part about the small injuries on the job. It's like, once somebody's okay, being able to laugh about that.
Yeah. And hurry up, let's record it for Instagram before we call 911.
Exactly, while I'm still down. I think I touched on most everything I wanted. I think that there's a lot more to you than just legs and a pretty face. I didn't realize it.
Now you know what my wife knows. You're getting it.
But I think as we've touched on that, the dynamic and the culture that you guys have created, definitely by design, and your dad's upbringing and his past, I think that has created a lifestyle and a business that's able to sustain through thick and thin, up and down. And I think that you guys have done that without really compromising that much. I think even with your framing, you've discussed everything, all things considered, whether it's environment, whether it's budget, the type of houses, where you're building, that you're still doing the best that you can do, still providing for employees, still providing for your family, your extended family, and everything else. And I think that that's something that a lot of people should respect and look towards, more so than John had mentioned, just trying to grow and feed this machine and create this image. Your dad, who's however old, is still driving around in a RAV, checking on the job sites. And like, I think that there's a lot to be said for like that frugality, and I have a lot of respect for that. So I appreciate everything you shared with us, and I think that the insight will be helpful to a lot of people who are trying to almost just keep up with the Jones. It's not going to bring happiness. It's not going to bring prosperity. It could do more damage than good. And I think that, long term, for something to last however long as it has, as Pioneer has, that there's more to it than just new trucks and, fancy builds and the highest budgets. So I can respect that a lot.
I got a huge amount of respect for you taking time out of your day daily to share what you know and passing it on. That's whether it's, you know, the tool you're using, the technique you're using, how you do it, and the environment that you're in, and all little things in between. Even the videos, you don't say anything. Like I said, that when I'm watching the time lapse, it's like, man, it just takes me back to a spot where things were a little easier. So thank you for that.
I was kind of wondering, it's like, man, why do these guys, besides the legs and the dance moves, like, why talk to awesome framers, you know? But I guess that's it. You know, everybody's got a story. You can always learn something from everybody. So even if it's a bad example.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the stuff, most of the people that we have on, there's just so much more than our Instagram and what we're putting out and the way that we market ourselves. There's a lot more to it. And I think especially for somebody who's been around it for longer, you know, I'm 33, Nick's younger than me, John's a little bit older, but somebody who's been in it, who's willing to share that knowledge or the experience, and especially because your experience is so firsthand, closely related to your father's, who's been in this for so long, that there's a lot, not necessarily even technical knowledge that you can pass on to us like this. I just feel like this podcast, it's not teaching you how to frame. It's not the tips, the tricks, which I think a lot of your Instagram is. You know, it's the practical application of the trade. But I think that what you kind of offered up here was far more valuable for a lot of people than that aspect, because not everyone's a framer, you know. But if somebody owns a business, it could be a material vendor, it could be a subcontractor, it could be another framer. I think that what you kind of conveyed tonight can be pretty valuable for people. But I think that we've learned a lot of people's backstory more so than what we kind of get at face value.
But I mean, that could be run across the spectrum where it's a floor guy, it's a trim guy. They can have this culture and have the same math and calcs to give them the same result. And I think no one comes on this thing saying, hey, I'm gonna boast about what I'm great at. You know, I think people, some reason we have people on like you know, we want to know your story because you are successful. You are doing it. Same thing you said about the tools. I'm not going to write a review and get paid for it. You're just telling us how it works. It might work for you. And the reason why I'm going to respect it is because I respect you because it has worked. The same reason why I put baseboard in first and hardwoods, it works for me. And people will respect that and maybe rethink their process just because it does work for me. Not because I'm saying, hey, get out there and do it this way. It's just, I'm going to give you my tips. And it makes, like Nick was saying, I'll drive home going, am I doing enough for my kids? A. And right. B, what example am I setting for, you know, my subs? Like the amount of people you had at your wedding. You know, that's lost. Like I'm done schmoozing you. It's just, I just think that's gonna be surprising when people listen to the podcast. I think that this is the angle that came out, but I think it's gonna be very well received, and I think people are gonna think about it more than they should be. That's it.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, we're just fortunate. I don't know how many people get to kind of grow up in the same. I mean, I was swinging a hammer. I'm sure there's pictures of me even, 6 years old. In fact, there's one picture of us visiting the farm where, like, all of us little kids, I must have been 8 or 9. I think they had like an old feed station or something that they were just going to burn, but they let us pound nails on the thing all day long. We've got these old film pictures where my cousin Brian and me were up there just pounding nails. They weren't doing anything. I mean, literally just be like pounding nails in your wall, just to pound nails. And it was just like, so apparently one of my first toys was a hammer. So I'm just fortunate enough to get to do it. And now with social media, get to see how people do it in England and Ireland and Australia and from all over the country. And you're just like, oh, we could use that here and we can use that here. Right. And other times you go, I'm not over there. It's way easier here. Mm-hmm. So it's just a good time to be in it.
Give you your perspective. Gives you perspective.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I still think that it's nice to see that you're still respecting what you're doing. How many times in this podcast have you alluded to the fact that you're fortunate to be doing what you're doing? And you obviously respect your craft and respect this industry and giving back and everything else. And it's nice and it's refreshing to see the attitude, because I think that the podcast has taken a different route than a lot of us probably intended, and that most people will expect, just because your demeanor normally is so carefree and easygoing. But there's a lot more to it than just that.
But it's important to be carefree and easygoing too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things. That's one of my philosophies. Try to make it easier on the people around you. Like, for example, when the safety inspector shows up, those guys have the worst job on earth. To go in and enforce safety on job sites, make it as easy on them as you can. And it's amazing how much farther you get. The building inspector, don't make it a nightmare for him. We had one inspector that told the story when he got into the crawl space, the framers went and just nailed off the crawl space hatch and left. I mean, this was like 20 years ago, and it could be urban legend. There's times where you want to do that, but you don't get anywhere. And it's like, just be respectful and be firm. And Brian's good at that. Be respectful. Know the code as well as they do, so that sometimes you can have that discussion. And then they'll respect you for it. So isn't that the old golden rule? Just treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Exactly.
To the degree that you can. So it works some of the time.
Who on Instagram, we haven't done in a while, who's your Instagram crush? Whose accounts do you like?
Okay, there's 3. 2 of them are women and 1 of them is not. You guys already mentioned RR Builders. I think Kyle, that dude is same thing, right? He's enthusiastic and he's got a good crew too. I mean, every time he's got a story with Greg in the background, it's like the most perfect straight man. It just kills me every time. I love those guys. Anne of all trades, she's local. We went up to the farm and visited the mini donkeys. I mean, just really cool environment up there. I think she's worth a follow. And April Wilkerson. It's like Wilker_DOS.
Did she just get a show?
She probably will. She's unbelievable. She's a YouTuber. When I met her at the Keen event, I didn't know who she was. And I mean, I think she's got 800,000 subscribers on YouTube now. But she doesn't let anything stop her. If there's something she wants to learn, she just does it and then records it. I mean, I've never met somebody like her. She's such a hardworking person, but really kind, got a great sense of humor. To me, she embodies what's so great about YouTube, where somebody can just say, I'm just going to make something. And then she does. Right. Metalworking, woodworking. Now she's got a CNC machine. I'm just like, wow. So those are fun accounts to follow because the stories are so informative. They're fun to watch. Cool. And they're a lot different than just the framing. So for me, it's like, I don't want to just look at framing all day.
Yeah.
Be inspired by other crafts.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
That's cool. Thanks for everything tonight. I know it's probably tough. You got a 3-hour time difference. You're out in Seattle.
It's 7:22 for me. It's late, guys.
Early.
It's the other way.
You still got time to go to the bar before tomorrow. Meet the concrete guys there.
Yeah, I know.
Also, for those that don't know, Tim's handle is Awesome Framers on Instagram, and he is also worth a follow. They are an enthusiastic bunch of guys that sing and dance throughout the day and spend 3 to 4 hours making videos.
It's true. I don't have time to do anything else. What is there anywhere else that we can find? You said you write for some tool publications.
Journal of Light Construction. So JLC Online and toolsofthetrade.net. And maybe Fine Home Building. We'll see how the year goes.
Sure. How about your business?
What are we? PioneerBuildersOnline.com. And then Brian's Instagram is Pioneer Builders Inc. I don't know.
Your dad's private account.
Nice try.
Let's give him a plug.
Yeah, Pioneer Builders Inc.
All of a sudden he'd have like 100 requests to follow. He'd wonder what happened.
Amazing.
You got anything else?
I don't.
Okay.
Tim, we appreciate this very much. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you guys. It's been fun.
You guys can find us at info@themoderncraftsman.org or the website www.themoderncraftsman.org. Instagram, _Modern Craftsman.
DM us.
Yeah, shoot us a DM. We're crushing the stats. If you guys pay attention, Doug's up.
Thanks to you guys.
Yeah, thanks to you guys. And actually, last week's episode was the highest daily downloads.
First day download.
Doug, would you text us at like 1 p.m. Said, hey, you guys just broke the record?
Yeah, something like that.
We're not keeping an eye on it at all.
No, we're not looking at it. We're not reading the comments.
They weren't all to the podcast itself, but some other older podcasts were downloaded as well. But
still,
highest single day download.
And I mean, that obviously has to do with the consistency. And the only way we can stay consistent is with you guys. Next week, we have Jeff Harvey from Harvey Custom Homes and Interiors. And you guys have 7 days to get any questions that you want us to dive into with Jeff or any upcoming podcast.
It's as easy as a DM, guys. DM us at the Modern Craftsman.
You know what I really like, actually, is them reposting or us reposting this stuff.
Yeah.
When they're posting our podcast and like doing that little blurb, I read everyone, and it's like I'm reposting it
all day.
And it's not because I it's because I want everyone to know that what the audience thinks about this thing, because then people start jiving off each other. I dig it. Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening, guys.